Hi, Vitaly. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
It's truly great pleasure to have you here, and there are so many questions I want to ask, but let's start with the first and the most obvious one. So how did you get into web design industry? How did everything started?
Right, so first of all, thank you. I'm really glad to be here today. So for me, it all started actually, what was it, now 18 years ago, and I feel so old saying that. But I started like in 88, 99, when I was just trying to figure out what to do with my life, really. I had no idea what to do, and so one of the things that I discovered quite early, I think, well, at the time at least, it was 1998, when somebody showed me the internet. And that was a big new thing for me. It was really critical for me is to be able, that feeling that I'm able to publish content for free and make it available to everybody. That was something that I guess really was intoxicating in some degree. I don't even know why, but it was really powerful. And so I started playing with the web and all kind of old technologies like VRML and DHTML that are long dead now, and just got into it. So my first thing was actually buying a CD because I was born in Belarus and I was growing up in Minsk, Belarus. So I bought a CD which had Photoshop and Illustrator and everything for $1. Wow. Very professional, very legal CD. And everybody around me was talking about Photoshop. And I said, no, I'm not going to learn Photoshop. I can do something else. And there was Image Styler, which is an application that probably nobody knows of, only few people, because there was only one release. And I started using it to create something, images, and then eventually I got into websites. And this was probably the tool that I stuck with until 2006 or so. And nobody around me was using it. But I mastered, because it was a really constrained environment, it helped me master this medium maybe, and understand how to build and create websites. So this was my start way back in 1998, 1999.
It's really an interesting story. So you started as a content writer, blogger?
Yeah, so basically it was just about, I had a football blog, which was all about getting scores from different, not many people know this, but I had, I think, 28 or maybe 29 issues, which were designed in word art, if it tells anybody, or something, horribly designed, and I had maybe 300-400 people subscribing to it, and then eventually also, which was sent by email, and then eventually also got a website for it. And yeah, this was kind of the start. And then from that point on, from content, it kind of went into web design, so I was freelancing later, years later. So and then this is how it all started.
So is your blog live? Still
I don't know, to be honest. I remember the address. I can post the address later. I don't know if it's live. I don't think so, because it was a free hosting with lots of ads, obviously. So it was virtualave.net, if anybody wants to look it up. But this was a site where you could sign up and get a free hosting with ads. We can look it up later. So I think I'm most passionate about chaos, to be honest. And I know it sounds weird, but I really like chaos. And when I say that, I mean things that are kind of unpredictable, things that nobody would normally do. So one of the things I really admire is to wake up in the morning, let's say on a Saturday or so, and then go to a bus station, like intercity bus station, and pick a random bus and just get in and then leave on a random stop and then go explore. And this is a time when I usually will not take my laptop with me, and I will, have my phone, but it will not have like a battery, so I cannot recharge it. And I'm just going to explore that city. And this is, I mean, it's not a hobby, but it's like something that really gets you to the point when you feel challenged to be confronted with the things that you would never experience otherwise. And apart from that, of course, what really drives me, what really helps me to get away from this world of the web is reading, although I wish I would read more. Sometimes I just enjoy reading a newspaper with jars and a glass of wine. This kind of answers the question whether I'm a wine person or a beer person. Maybe because I was living in Germany for now 15 years, I just got tired of beer. I cannot see beer anymore. At this point, it's going to be wine. And so this helps, like reading, relaxing a little bit, and also gym, just running. I just like running. Apart from that, there are some little activities like, I don't know, eventually billiard and things like that, which require me to really just move away from the web. But also, I like staying in this area of design, so I sometimes go to libraries, I like libraries, and just flip through old books to see typography, to take photos of old magazine layouts and things like that.
So I'm starting to think actually that people can really be inspired when they are offline.
I agree.
And we are starting to forget the offline part of the world, so we are mostly online.
Yeah, I think it's actually important to force yourself to be offline. Now there are tools that kind of enable you to block everything but whatever it is you're working on. And I think that if you want to focus, it's really, really useful to be offline. It's hard. I'm not the kind of person who says, I manage this, I got this, I can just turn everything off and be offline for like a couple of hours. But I really enjoy, for example, time in planes or in trains when I don't have any connectivity. So most people would go to new places and get SIM card first. And sometimes I do if I have an urgent project where I need to be online. But often I kind of don't get a SIM card by design because I want to be offline. I kind of have the time to explore the city instead of looking at the phone and be forced to examine random places. Maybe even bad places, but they will be local, right? So you want to stay away from tourist places, right? But it might be a good idea to be forced to explore this randomness. I really love that. Basically, as we mentioned, so I started kind of looking into the web in 1998, 1999 and writing about it and blogging about football, right? And then actually really kind of trying to understand what I can do on the web. And then eventually 2000 my parents moved to Germany and they brought me with them. And this was the time when it was really tough for me because I didn't understand the language, I didn't speak German, I had no money, I had no friends, I had no social circle. I literally had to fight like most kids who are just brought in a different environment are. Not necessarily in a different country, but even if it's a different city. And so for me it was important to, I guess at the time I felt that it is important for me to gain independence. So I wanted to find a way to earn my money so I wouldn't depend on my parents or my brother. And the same goes for language, which is why I worked very hard to learn language fast. So it was really surprising for me because after a year, I found myself, driving in a tram, actually understanding German, not being able to speak properly, but understanding, just because I really tried very hard, right? And so at the time, again, I was also trying to find a way to earn money. And so I kind of referred back to the thing that I could do. And that was actually building websites. I wasn't, a master. I was amateur at best. But many people were experimenting and playing. And so I just started trying to do something in this area, became a freelancer for web design and web development. And then when I was studying computer science in university in Germany, there was a really nice position for webmaster of one of the projects in the university. And I was young and I wanted money. I needed money. So I thought maybe I could try it out. And so I just signed up and then I was managing this project for a year or maybe even more. And then new projects, kind of related projects came in. And so this is how I grew in this field. Because for the time, for maybe 2 years or so, I abandoned web development because I felt that it was too, not boring, but it was too difficult or weird, annoying, buggy. Browsers were kind of cryptic in a way. So I kind of moved away and tried to do something different, maybe just move to software development, not web design, but software development. But then it pulled me back and I started looking into typography, web typography and usability and web design. And these two projects, main projects, brought me then back to freelancing. And eventually, after all of these years of fighting back and forth, I was also writing articles online and on my own blog. And then we had this idea, me and a partner, a colleague of mine, who actually had a magazine in German at the time, had an idea maybe we could just do something in English. And so we just translated a couple of articles first into English. And this became Smashing Magazine then in September 2006. And it was, for me personally, more about collecting all the different techniques and resources and tools that I would be using for my work as a freelancer, because there was no such place. It was all scattered. Everybody was really experimenting, trying to do a lot of different things. CSS was a big thing, just because it was quite new, and everybody was trying to figure out some of the interesting techniques to use, how to use it. And so everybody was writing and blogging, and I spent a lot of time collecting all of this stuff. And this was actually the start. So there are 2 points here. One of them is we always try to focus on quality. We've been doing it from day one. And so it's always something that has to deliver value to readers. And, well, in the beginning, I was the primary reader of the magazine, so it was something that was supposed to deliver quality to me in my work. And it kind of still remains relevant, even, years later. But of course, I cannot know everything about everything, right? So in the early days, we would kind of let some articles on the site, and get some articles published on the site, although quality-wise, they were not right. Just because I'm not a big expert in security, for example. And we would publish an article on security, which would contain some holes or some weird phrases which are not quite correct, and that was a big deal. That was kind of tough. In order to fight this, we introduced had introduced a so-called experts panel, where we heavily review articles before they go live. And so this, kind of as a second half of the review, helps to establish the quality. Number one is I review, or my colleagues review, and make sure that the author is going in the right direction. And then once this is happening, and the author delivers the first draft or second draft, we also introduce an experts panel review, where people who have experience specifically in this area provide technical feedback. It's not about grammar or spelling at this point, but specifically making sure that facts are straight, and the quality speaks of itself. So there are kind of 2 layers which go into publishing every article, which is why many people hate us, and me specifically, because I blog articles, or we blog articles which are not good enough. And you can see it as being a highbrow magazine where we are trying to be respectable, and we're looking at you like you are not good enough. But at the same time, it's more about maintaining that quality, so people coming to the site can rely on the quality of that content or the service. I always try to kind of find this balance, or fight this balance, because on the one side, it's important to match the expectations. So if your users, your readers, whatever, are expecting quality from you, you should deliver the quality, right? But at the same time, if they demand or expect certain features, a certain way of presenting information or delivering information, well, it doesn't mean you should be doing this, right? Because I feel that you also need to have a vision, because you need to go somewhere. You should not just go where people ask you to go, but maybe try to go in the direction which you believe in, because this is your project. You've been there from day one, and you are responsible for it, and you also have the ownership, right? And I'm don't mean it in a dictatorship kind of way. I do what I say, and I don't care about what others say. But I think it's important to have a broader view of things. So every feature often solves a very specific problem which exists well within the scope of where it's defined. But if we look outside of that scope in the big picture, right, it might be either irrelevant or counterproductive, kind of ruining the entire big vision of the project. So I would say that from the technical perspective, we should make sure that what we deliver is good in terms of usability, in terms of user experience, that people are delighted, that they feel like they're enjoying reading it. It should not be a slow experience. It should not be a dirty experience, meaning like having bad patterns that people kind of try to trick people into doing something, right? I think it's really, really important, especially today, that when we're creating experiences, if you want to stand out, the only way to stand out, because many people are creating experiences today, is by creating delightful, good design, where people find that it's emotional, it connects, it's personal, it has a character, it has a personality, and it delights. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It can be quirky, funny, weird, a bit strange at times, unperfect, right? But it has to have a personality of people, of a team working behind it, right? Like if you look at all the products we have today, like Slack, right? There are many products like Slack. It's not like Slack, it's totally unique piece of software. Or MailChimp, right? But they have a very unique personality. They have illustrations, they have animations, which are all very consistent, and they also have a nice custom experience. And at this point today, we're kind of moving away from just designing interfaces towards more holistic design, like service design, when it's all about all the different touch points, be it customer support, be it the interface, be it performance, how fast the site acts, and so on and so forth. So for me, on the one side, just to sum up, it's about making sure that the experience we create is really good in terms of across all of these touch points, be it customer experience or customer support, performance and interface design, for example, but at the same time having that character, having that vision where the person or the people behind that product are trying to be, or not trying, but are showing themselves. It should not be generic, it should have a personality. So I think that this is where the really interesting products appear. This is a landscape when they emerge. I think the only option we have actually is to abstract away from designing for one specific form factor. Meaning very often you will find designers kind of designing specifically for desktop view, and that's it. And then optimizing for mobile, and then maybe optimizing for slightly larger screens and slightly smaller screens, kind of trying to fill the gaps. But if you're trying to fill the gap, you will miss one gap for sure, or a couple of gaps, because you will not think about specific, kind of looking to specific areas which need optimizing. So one way of how designers today are trying to fight it, to produce those multi-screen experiences, is to be a bit more general about the design process. So they would start with the core essence of what you're designing first. So just to give an example, if you're designing an e-commerce experience, you will not start with a grid or layout, but you would start thinking about what would make a fantastic e-commerce experience on that site. What would make it tremendous? What would make it way better? What would make it stand out from all the other websites out there? And then you really focus on trying to make this experience, the flows, the user flows, amazing, incredible, tremendous, right? And this is a starting point. And once you have this, you start thinking about the components you need to make it happen. Accordions, tables, breadcrumbs, I don't know, all of them, right? And then you start thinking about how they would fit within a nice layout, right? So instead of starting with layout and going towards design, like the design in terms of interface design or copywriting, you start with essence, you start with the copywriting, and then you kind of converge towards layout, right? And so if you do this, and then at some point start prototyping or building mobile first or desktop first, it doesn't matter, you always have a holistic view of what you're doing. You know that your goal is to create this tremendous experience. Your goal is not to make an accordion fit on a small screen or a large screen, but to serve that purpose, right? And then you need to tweak your layout in a way that it emphasizes that purpose. And this sounds a bit abstract and a bit difficult at times, maybe, but this is a way to create experiences that will actually survive beyond the limits or the limitations of a certain form factor. And this is where this conversation is about design systems, pattern libraries, style guides, kind of the new big thing that has become big, I guess, last year. Everybody was talking about it. This is where all of this comes into play.
So basically, you should first think about the big picture, if I can say it like that,
Yes.
and focus on the elements.
Yeah, but and it's even really kind of staying away from the page or the layout as far as you can. So you start thinking about what would make a perfect interface. And what we do, for example, when we work on a project, is always starting writing down the text of the interface. So this would be the dashboard, and we're kind of trying to do copywriting first. And I even know companies that would hire not, copywriters and not UX designers and not front-end developers, but would primarily focus on trying to get a comedian on board, right? A web design agency is trying to hire, as a consultant maybe, a comedian. Why? Because comedians are very good at getting to the point in a quirky, funny way. They're actually brilliant copywriters, right? And if you can make an interface that kind of is funny when you reach it, and people will maybe even ignore some issues that the interface has, because they're, oh, that's nice. So they will have this kind of emotional connection to the interface without actually looking at the visual element. Because often when we think about design, we tend to kind of focus, I think, only on the visual level, only on the, on the skin. But there is so much more going on. And there are so many connections that have to be made. And I think that copywriting is one of the major ones. So in terms of challenges, I think we still have to figure out how to create those multi-screen experiences well. That's still everybody's trying, everybody's playing, everybody's building something. And there are issues with tools. We don't have the perfect tools to, for example, to hand off from design to development. That's always messy. It always takes time. Maintenance is also a big deal. But I think what's really interesting to see now is kind of this rise of conversational interfaces, which just do not have a screen. There is no interface screen. You're just communicating with the machine about if you want to book a ticket, you just say where you want to go, what date you want to go from on, and that's it. You're expecting a response, a textual, pure textual response, maybe with a few icons here and there, and so you can book without an actual interface. This is going to be a challenge that we'll have to design for. That's one thing. The other thing is voice-based interfaces. That's always a story. It's always quite hard. For example, recent example is from Amazon Echo, where one girl, I think it was in Canada, maybe in the US, she wanted to get a present for Christmas. So she was talking to Echo, because normally in the past we used to hope that Santa will bring us something. So Echo is a system where you can just speak to it and order things on Amazon, right? So you say, I need batteries tomorrow, from AA batteries tomorrow, order them. And then Echo does it for you without confirmation, and then you get them delivered next day. So she did exactly that on Echo, and she said, I want a dollhouse tomorrow. And then dollhouse got delivered, right? And it was a big, big, big dollhouse. And, just like a Santa, right? And then it got into news for some reason. And that girl, ordered her own Santa present. And then on the news, and that was really interesting. The newscaster, the person who is kind of reading the news, he said things like, that girl said to Amazon Echo, Echo, deliver a dollhouse to my house. Next day, thousands of houses got that dollhouse delivered to them because the machine, Amazon Echo, understood that it's a person saying, Echo, I want a dollhouse delivered tomorrow. Right? And this is where we see the limitations of the technology. We need to figure out how to do it better. Right? It would be easy to solve it, I guess. You could just ask for authorization code or passcode and so on, right? But you can see that there are many challenges that have to be discovered first. We're just, getting started. And very often we will find that many products that we're designing today are not focusing on the kind of visual layer. I think at this point we know how to design good interfaces. But many products spend a lot of time perfecting the product, making sure that micro interactions like hitting a button or scrolling down or anything of that kind had a very smooth, delightful interaction. When you scroll down or I don't know how it's called, pull down the Twitter feed, it kind of pulls down as if it was an actual physical object. This kind of micro interactions which require animation, transitions, this kind of thing. We see a lot of people spending a lot of time on them. And because many products are not like that. It's not a smooth interaction. It's a bit abrupt. So this is where I think on a practical level, a lot will be done this year and probably next year. But on a more global level, we have a lot to solve in terms of VR, AR, in terms of conversational interfaces, chatbots, machine learning, artificial intelligence. If you're working in that field, or you have some experience in that field, you will not be out of job next years. So user testing is, it has always been important, but it's very easy to dismiss, right? Because very often you tend to think about the features and what you want to do instead of what the user wants to use. And this is again where this balance is important between what you want and what your users want. And the more user tests you can provide, the better, but it doesn't have to be expensive. Very often you'll see people thinking it requires a lot of eye tracking software, a lot of expensive tools, you need a lab, or anything for that. we do it really in a simple way. We just get a few people who are the audience of that website or that web app that we're building, and we're getting in a cafe and we observe them using an app. We give them a certain budget, maybe, I don't know, $30 or so, that they can spend in the app if it can be spent in the app. And we just observe them doing that. And we give them a task, and we just see what they do. And at the same time, we also do the same thing with the main competitor, just to see how much faster or how much slower they are with that other app. And then just by doing that in a Starbucks or so, in a coffee shop somewhere, right, you can literally learn a lot. And you spend maybe $100 or so. And then, of course, you would need to repeat it every now and again if you want to get more insights. But it doesn't have to be an expensive eye-tracking lab with all kind of software and tools. When it comes to skills, I think there are two kinds of developments happening now, which is a bit sad if I think about it, because it really disrupts the community. So I see some people going towards niche areas, like really becoming specialists in one specific area and nothing else. I'm a Magento expert, I know everything about Magento, but not really an expert in something else. And at the same time, other people who are more generalists, they will know a lot about very different fields, but not in detail, not like really in deep. But then they can actually still navigate. So if they need to learn something about something, they will know where to go to explore this area, to understand, to learn it, right? And I think that these people are kind of really moving away from each other within the community. So you'll see people working, like being in a circle, like in a closed circle, it's a closed bubble on Drupal or on WordPress, and they would be pretty much living inside of the Slack channel, private Slack channel, where they'll be talking only about Drupal or only about WordPress. And at the same time, other people who do not go deep unless it's necessary. And so you'll have kind of camps, right? And I think what's really important for both camps today, whether you are in the first or in the other one, is to have a really good ability to learn. Because I am amazed every single month how much is changing so rapidly. Many people say that it's very easy or easier to develop or design today than, let's say, 5-10 years ago. Well, 10 years ago, browsers were much quirkier and weird and difficult. But today we have such a big variety of all the things that can happen potentially. Unpredictability in terms of the screens, network conditions, everything. It's totally unpredictable. We just don't know what the user is or is not going to do or use, right? That the only chance that we have to manage this complexity is to see what other people are doing and keep learning every day if you can. Obviously, not everybody would be able to do it, but for example, for this workshop that I'm giving tomorrow, I have to work every Friday and dedicate like 3 to 4 hours to update my slides because things get outdated so quickly. That's incredible. So if you know how to learn, and if you're kind of having the skill of being able to just sit down for 3 hours and get to the bottom of a certain area that you've never heard of before, this will bring you a long way. And personally, I feel that it's important to have one area where you're a specialist, but still be generalist in as many areas as possible, and then being able to navigate if necessary. I think this is your only chance to survive, because technologies and tools change rapidly. People don't change, skills don't change. You can learn new ones, and the skill to learn will stay with you forever. It will help you not only in web design, right? So I think that this is probably the most important one.
So you should specialize in one thing and
at the same time
look at the picture,
yes,
the IT industry.
Exactly. At the same time, be exposed to all the other things. So, for example, I highly encourage designers to go to developer meetups or developer workshops. And the same developers, I highly encourage developers to go to design workshops. Not because designers have to become developers, or developers have to become designers. It's ideal to know everything about everything, but it's not realistic. But even if you just know a little bit about the other side and how they operate and why certain decisions are made in a certain way, that can help you a lot in your work. And to also just speed up the process of going from design to development. So generalists, I think, should not be underestimated if they are capable of navigating in a specific area and then finding their way through that area.
Yeah, Smashing Magazine is there to help.
I hope.
Yeah, so what can we expect next from the conference or the magazine or books? Are you working on any books now?
Yeah, so we are working on a couple of books, I think 4 or 5 to be honest, I don't even remember. And my memory is, my memory is horrible. And we just released a sketchbook, handbook. We are working, also released an accessibility book last year. Now we are working on a performance book and modular design. This is kind of this approach of starting from a holistic level and then going into components. And we probably will be working on the new Smashing book, but I haven't started yet, so I probably should. But also we have a big relaunch coming soon. That's been a year of work for us, and everything is different there. Everything. Do you like cats?
Cats, yeah.
Yeah, so if you like cats, you will like the relaunch. If you don't like cats, you might be in trouble. Yes.
And the conference is soon?
Yes, yes, we also have conferences this year, and the conferences for me are just opportunity to, bring together like-minded people and also kind of push the boundaries of what we think is possible. So by inviting people who are experimenting and trying to be on the edge. And so we have one coming up in New York in June and in San Francisco in April. And we have 2 in Europe as well, one in Freiburg in Germany, in our hometown in September, and another in Barcelona. And yeah, it's always fun to, arrange a conference, I guess. I would love to see a conference in Novi Sad.
Why not?
By the way, just saying.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I would say one thing, I would say 2 things. So I would say what designers should do and what designers should not do. Although who I am to say what they should do. But I think that one can only...
tip for them.
Yes, I think one can only benefit from 2 things. First, having a side project. If you don't know anything about calligraphy, start a project about calligraphy, for example. Or if you don't know anything about CSS because you're a designer, just start a blog about CSS. And try to do something and then see what happens. Experiment. Dedicate a certain amount of time every weekend, maybe just 1 hour, maybe even half an hour, and do something outside of your area to experiment, to explore. That's one thing. Another thing that designers should do, I think, now I forgot what I want to say. So I will say what designers should not do, I think. All right, another thing that designers should do, I think, is to take a project that you really admire. So let's say you found a website that looks amazing. So take this site and try to copy it. Just as a side project, try to figure out, okay, how do I draw this hand drawing thing? How do I build this navigation, right? Just try to copy it as best as you can. Because you will learn a lot about how to approach this problem. And then you can actually look it up, how they actually did it, right? That's number 2. And then the one thing that I should not recommend, or that I would not recommend to do, is to, before you start working on a project, look at what other websites are doing. So this is often done, but then as a result you end up with something like a compromise of all the different things you find everywhere. You're just basically ticking off the boxes. But then the product that you're building and as a result, or you're designing as a result, kind of lacks a vision. It doesn't have a personality. It's like a Frankenstein, more or less, just built out of fancy features of fancy blocks from other websites, be it design-wise or be it features, right? Be it like certain design style or actual capabilities of your software, or your website. So instead of going and looking at what others are doing, you can still do it later. You don't have to do it in the beginning. Instead, just think about what would make a truly tremendous experience. Think about what would make you really happy if you had to kind of solve this problem, be it bookkeeping, be it buying an item, be it using a service. What would make a tremendous experience there? And this should be a start. And then you can always add features or kind of visual quirks later. And pick a theme that you think works best, and then work your way into integrating it into the design instead of the other way around.
That's great advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Nice evening, talk and workshop, and time in Novi Sad, I guess, and in Belgrade.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
It was really a pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you.